Russia's conflict with Ukraine dates back many decades. At the heart of the discord has always been power, sovereignty, and Western values. Here's why the conflict has extended beyond the two countries' borders to involve the US, NATO, and a host of other countries. The Soviet Union, also known as the USSR, was once a socialist nation that included Russia, Ukraine, and 13 other states. It was the largest country in the world at the time, and its people spoke over 130 languages. From the 1940s to the 1990s, the USSR and the US and their allies became locked in what became known as the Cold War, a long, tense conflict for world dominance between capitalism in the West and communism in the East. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created during this time to provide collective security against the Soviet Union. The membership-based military alliance, which exists to this day, would promote democratic values and cooperate on defense and security-related issues. During this period, the Soviet economy, military, and government was faltering. When Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in the 1980s and introduced a new set of freedoms and political reforms, some took advantage of this and started independence movements. By 1991, the USSR had completely devolved, the Cold War ended, and Gorbachev resigned. This is where the conflict really begins. The breakup of the USSR left sore wounds for some Russians, including Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin called the end of the Soviet Union the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century, and has been trying to gain control of the region ever since. At the same time, since the 1990s, many post-communist states requested and have been granted NATO membership, threatening Russia. Russia is especially concerned about Ukraine joining NATO and the European Union. Ukraine shares many cultural similarities with Russia, especially in the eastern and southern regions which are Russian-speaking. Putin has argued that Ukraine unfairly inherited historic parts of Russia during the demise of the Soviet Union. In 2014, Russia illegally annexed Crimea. In that same year, separatists, backed by Russia, took control of an eastern region known as Donbass. Russia has been giving these separatist forces military support and financial aid ever since. Its goal: weaken Ukraine and slow the country's tilt toward the West. Ukraine wants to keep its independence and sovereignty, and the US has been trying to support that. Since 2014, it's committed more than $5.4 billion in total assistance to Ukraine in both security and non-security aid. While Ukraine hasn't joined NATO yet, it's been in talks since the 1990s. Ukraine needs all 30 NATO members to agree to be let in. So far, there hasn't been unanimous consent. The reasons vary from not wanting to upset Russia to believing Ukraine has too much unrest and corruption. For now, Western nations remain at odds with Russia over Ukraine. They're hoping for stability and peace, but seeing very little of it.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out these other videos from USA Today to stay up to date with all the latest news.